What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Ionic Show. My name is Ben.
My name is Max.
What's your name? That's a great name.
Fantastic name.
I love that name.
That is a good name.
We have an awesome show today. We're going to get into some really exciting things. It's been a while.
Been a long time. Too long,
Some
would say.
It's been far too long. So we're going to go over some Ionic apps that are out there in the wild. We're trying to catch them all. We are going to talk about Ionic 2, talk about some routing in Ionic 2, Ionic Native. We're going to talk about some progressive web app stuff going on, a lot since the last time you guys chatted when Adam was on the show. We're also going to get into Ionic Creator, which just had an awesome new release come out, and we're going to get into the meat of that, or the vegetables of that, if you're a vegetarian. And we're also going to talk about the Ionic Cloud platform, which is quickly approaching production release. We're super pumped about that, so we'll get into some of those details. And then last but not least, we're going to get into this lovely IPA that we are drinking today, local lovely IPA.
And I just found out today is IPA day.
Today, yeah, we just found out today is actually IPA day, so cheers to that. Without further ado, let's get the show started. All right, welcome back. Man, it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It feels good sitting here.
I know. I was just thinking the other day, it's been too long since we were here with all our friends.
With all our Ionic friends all around the world. Thank you
Talking
for
about
joining
our
us.
favorite topic ever.
Ionic.
Beer.
Oh.
Ionic.
My favorite topic is Ionic.
Oh, okay.
Yours can be beer.
Okay, fair enough.
So what do we have to talk about today? Where should we start?
Let's start with Ionic 2. Get
All
it
right.
out of the way so everyone can kind of skip the rest of it. That's all I care about. But we have so much to talk about with Ionic 2. It's been a long time coming.
It has been.
We've been working so hard on the next release. It's so close to being done.
So close.
The RC is so close. But it's just we're just not quite there yet.
There's just a few more little things we need to figure out. We'll get into that.
So let's start with some fan mail. And by fan mail, I mean forum posts.
Ooh.
I was actually just searching about Ionic 2.
Is this a new thing we can do?
This is a new thing. I just was thinking it'd be fun to talk about what other people say about Ionic
I like it.
and embarrass them in front of a international audience.
And embarrass ourselves
And,
at the same time.
That's a given. Okay, so I found this forum post that says, "My take on Ionic 2. Having just crawled out of the old school app coding woodwork onto Ionic 1, I was taking my first steps going forward and walking upright. I just found my feet. Just found them. And then Ionic 2 happened. I have just had my first look, and Ionic 2 is like sprinting. Think Usain Bolt.
Wow.
That's fast. It is no doubt a giant leap forward, but I very much doubt whether it is going to be for me. It is really different. Oh, man.
Okay, so we didn't read the whole
I
post.
should have read that first.
That was that hurt.
But in all seriousness, I checked the forum post, and it was from January 30th. That was 8 months ago.
We've come a really long way.
Angular 2 was, I think, in alpha back then.
Were they not even beta?
I don't know. They maybe were in beta, but it was a rough beta.
So one thing we learned is we read the whole fan mail first.
Yeah, let's get to the end of the fan mail before we decide to read it.
But honestly, he made a good point. It was really painful back then. It was really hard to get up and running with Ionic 2. It was still in alpha. I think that was
Yeah.
before even the last Ionic show when that was written.
We had a
If I remember.
very confusing build chain. We had Webpack over here. We had Gulp over here. No clear answer on what we were standardizing on. We didn't really know where Angular was going to go. We didn't know where JavaScript was going to go. We didn't know where TypeScript was going to go. We didn't know anything about the tools that we're using underneath. And at the same time, we were still learning about what we wanted Ionic 2 to be. So in January 30th, we totally empathize with you guys. It was hard
we feel
for
this
us.
every single day.
It was hard for us to build this. So I want to talk about things that we've done to make Ionic 2 10 times easier, because the goal when we built it was to make it 10 times easier, 100 times easier than Ionic 1. Otherwise, we were
What's
that
the
would be a
point?
failure for us if it was harder than Ionic 1. So in the meantime, what we've done is we've dramatically built out our docs. So if you go to ionicframework.com/docs/v2, we have tons of examples of all the components. We have a getting started guide. We have a tutorial. We have all these resources now. The community has been like stepping up and writing awesome tutorials.
Thank you. It's been awesome. And speaking of docs, we should talk about a lot of the love that the Ionic Native docs have been getting, because there have been some really big improvements on that. Actually, we just wrote about it, I think a week ago, but Ionic Native is a new thing that we just released. You've been actually working on it a lot, but we actually have a community member, Ibrahim.
Yeah, and he's been doing awesome work on it, because 8 months ago it was very challenging for people to figure out how to use native Cordova plugins with Angular 2, because they wouldn't update they wouldn't run the change detection, so you needed to figure out how to use ng zone. It was really complicated. So Ionic Native is another example of what we've done to make Ionic 2, developing with Ionic 2 much easier.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, the tool chain is starting to standardize. So Angular 2 is kind of converging around Webpack 2. We are starting to work with them to get that incorporated. Typescript is much more stable now. All the features work. We threw out Babel and ES6. Like, that was such a kind of confusing mess for us. We had an ES6 way, and then we had a Typescript way, because we were kind of sitting in the middle, like, okay, well, TypeScript's kind of new. We're too afraid and timid to like push it.
And actually, I get this question all the time. Like at meetups, people often ask, "What do you guys think about TypeScript? What do I have to know with TypeScript?" We should probably just spend a few minutes talking.
Let's do it. Like,
because
I think
we were really actually, I think, a little bit opposed at first to using TypeScript, because we just weren't used to it. We didn't really know what it was, how it worked.
I hated it, to be honest.
I think we really didn't like it at first.
I'm a dynamic typing guy. I use Python. I came to JavaScript because I didn't have to specify all my types. Like, that's what I like. And so when I had to do it with TypeScript, I was angry because my IDE was yelling at me that I wasn't using the right type here. And I'm like, I don't really care. It's a freaking number. Just deal with it. So for me, like, the rules were kind of constricting. But what we've found since then is that when you actually do incorporate types and you do start to use the tools, like, we are working 10 times faster. Our code is way more stable. There's fewer bugs. And the typing actually is given our tooling like a ton of interesting metadata to do things like help us refactor and move symbols around. And now there's some new tools that help you analyze your code base. Like, you can't do that without all this rich type information.
Yeah, I think we've actually had a full like 180 on TypeScript.
Yep.
Since the initial like playing around with it.
But back then we were like, okay, we're going to try to push ES6 with Babel because that was kind of what React was doing, and it seemed like a lot of people liked that, and Babel was winning. But if you look at the ES6 space, I think a lot of questions there are still unanswered, whereas TypeScript for us, and I think for a lot of our community, answered so many questions. It made people feel like, okay, TypeScript it works, it's consistent, the tools are kind of there for me. Like, it's a very mature at this point language. So we're super excited about using it.
I think Adam likes to say it's like writing JavaScript with your seatbelt on.
Yep.
Or maybe that's just a saying that other
you
people
do wear
say,
your seatbelt, right?
Do you wear your seatbelt? Great.
Then you'll like TypeScript.
Yeah. Okay, so we covered TypeScript. What about let's talk about Ionic Native a little bit too, because we wanted to take some time out and go into. I mean, you kind of already went over the overview, but I think it's recently gotten a lot of love.
Well, the project didn't even exist until I think this spring. And for those who knew about ng Cordova, we built that because with Angular 1, there were all these weird things you needed to do with like scope digests, promises, and all this stuff to like make your code feel like Angular. And ng Cordova was pretty popular, but we messed up by not pushing it front and center and making it available for every single project as a default. And then also we wrote too much code on top of the plugin, so it became difficult to maintain. So with Ionic Native, we were like, okay, we've got TypeScript. We've got this environment that doesn't actually rely on any framework. It's really just ES6 and modules that we're importing. So for us, we were like, okay, we could wrap all these plugins out there in the Cordova world, add types to them, document them, put them all in one place, and make them really, really easy to use in like an ES6 class-based environment, and then also have all these amazing benefits by being able to say like, okay, this option that I'm going to pass to this camera plugin, I actually know what the fields mean, and they're typed for me. So it's been a way for us to really like improve, I think, the usability of the Cordova plugins, like curate them and have them all in one place.
Yeah, and also try to like proliferate the knowledge around the fact that you can do all of the same thing with Ionic Native, or back in the day with NG Cordova. You can do all of the same things that native apps can do. You can access all of those native, features, phone features on your phone, and get all the same functionality that you're looking for when you're building with Cordova or you're building with a hybrid app. And that's really the goal of Ionic Native, is to perpetuate that and like teach people that actually it's very, very possible to do all the same stuff.
Yep. So Ionic Native for a while was just kind of like a small project. We weren't really working on it. It wasn't documented. We had plenty of people tell us in not so nice words that the docs were just terrible. So we have really hustled to get them to be in a much better place. Part of that has just come from us promoting the project. Now we have many more contributors, more people are using it, more people are helping document it, submitting pull requests. So that alone is helping it. And the cool thing is, it doesn't rely on Angular or any framework. It is just TypeScript. Yeah. And actually, it's just either vanilla JavaScript if you use the bundle, ES6 modules if you want to use them, or TypeScript. So you can use it in any single project, whether or not you use Ionic. Like that was kind of the goal of it. We wanted it to be agnostic for the Cordova community.
Yeah. Cool. So check out Ionic Native. We have a pretty in-depth blog post on it on our blog, or just go to the docs. You can check it out there and see all the cool stuff we have. And we're still working on it. This is a work in progress. We're going to continue to improve it. We're going to continue time investing in it. We're trying to do a lot of different things all at once right now. But we're really happy that we were finally able to find some time and extra resources to actually spend on Ionic Native.
And like the people, in the last few months, we've added 6 to 7 really great people to the team. And for a while, like we were kind of spread thin, and like we've really, really gotten some awesome help recently. Velocity has gone up. Yep. Super excited to kind of launch all the stuff we've been working on.
Yeah, we have a lot to release, honestly.
Yep.
So I think we should also spend some time and talk about our new router, the routing in Ionic 2. What is that?
Routing.
So what is the difference between router and a router?
Well, a router is a router. A router is magic.
Oh, let's go into this.
So
I feel like we could dive deep here.
Basically, everyone keeps asking us about Ionic 2's router. How am I going to have a router? How am I going to use Angular 2's router? And for a long time, like we've kind of been like, okay, we were thinking of incorporating Angular 2's router, which is a solid router. And what we've actually come to the conclusion of is that in order to enable people to build apps that navigate in the most native possible way, a standard router like the one we use in Ionic 1, like UI router, like NG router, the original Angular router, like Angular 2 router, it was going to be really challenging to get a traditional web-based router to work like a native navigation system. Yeah. So that's when I say routing, we're actually going to start to refer to this as a deep link engine, because that's what you do on a native app. You're linking to content hidden deep inside of what is traditionally not a web app, and there's a whole ecosystem built up around helping people link to content in native apps, which Ionic apps are.
So it's contextual, right? So like if you're navigating through an experience on a native app, inherently it's going to have a different flow of content and information than you would normally get on, let's say, like just a mobile website, for example,
right,
for the same content. And it's just not going to be stacked the same way. And so the routing has to account for that. It has to be contextual in that way.
So a good example is like the contacts app. You can kind of navigate between contacts. That's a hard word. Contacts. You can navigate like infinitely. And the back button kind of shows you this huge nested thing that you've kind of gone through. And like, okay, that's a good analogy for the standard web browser. Now, take a look at the App Store app where you have tabs. And inside of each tab, you can navigate indefinitely as well. Yeah. But when you switch between each tab, And I've got a blog post kind of showing off this exact example coming shortly. When you switch between each tab, you notice the back button changes completely, and the history stack in each tab is totally different. So we've got this concept of nested states, nested navigation, that is not really, there's no analog in the web browser world. And these routers that we're using on the website, they are awesome, they're helpful, they're really great, but when you actually get down to navigation in the app, they're very, they're a little too rigid. You have to very explicitly map where each page is going to live in the hierarchy. So let's say on the App Store app, to use that example, because I think it's a really good example, on the featured tab, I can go check out the Twitter app if it's featured. On the search tab, I can go and search for the Twitter app. And if I view those two Twitter app pages, they're practically identical, except they're actually totally unique, distinct pages. And so to do that in a router, I'd have to actually map and say, okay, this is the feature tab and then the app detail page. And I'd have this nested route. And I'd have to do the same for search. But the way it's actually built underneath, there is no strict routing like that. It's totally freeform. I can navigate to any single page in the entire app from any other page. And I don't have to declare routes for it. Instead, what I end up saying is, hey, if you want to share this page, here's a unique deep link to get back here. So the navigation is not driven by URLs while the app's running, but a URL can be used as a breadcrumb to get back to this unique place. And if you notice, to continue with the App Store example, if you share an App Store URL, the App Store app actually loads and doesn't select any of the tabs. It's like this kind of weird default experience. And what that showed to us was it's up to you as the developer, as the app designer, to decide what happens when someone clicks a link and comes from somewhere else. And you need to give them like a good default experience. And that's really a design problem. So a router we found was a little bit too restrictive. So instead, all the navigation in an Ionic 2 app is done with push pop, where you basically say, I'm going to push this new page on, I'm going to pop it off. And you can do that nested pretty much infinitely. And you can have 10, 100 parallel history stacks.
It's whatever.
It's completely freeform.
Yeah.
And in the end, every page can say, okay, if you want to get back to me, here's my unique URL. But I'm not going to necessarily show you your entire progress when you come to me in like a fresh app instance. It's kind of confusing. So I've got a big blog post coming that I think will distill it for everyone.
Yeah, and hopefully we can make some graphics to go alongside it to try to convey the concept, because it's kind of an abstract idea when you're trying to explain it, but when you kind of
and it's
can
not
visualize it makes a little bit more sense.
It's not a standard web development thing.
But honestly, it's really intuitive. I mean, if you're used to using apps, you already know what this is. And we're just describing something that, it's like trying to describe someone how to ride a bike. If you know how to ride a bike, you just know how to ride a bike, kind of, if that makes sense.
It's like using Vim. I can't tell you how I use it, but my muscles know how to use it. I use Vim.
We know you use Vim. Everyone knows you use Vim. All right, so
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So let's link to a blog post, ideally.
Yes.
So you guys can read a bit more and learn a bit more about how we're going to be tackling routing. It's going to be awesome. It really is going to be fantastic. We're so excited about how it works, and it's going to enable us to do some really interesting things. But one of the things that I think we should talk about that kind of is a nice segue is progressive web apps.
Yep.
Because this is another thing that Ionic 2 is really, really set up to take advantage of and allow you to take advantage of. So if you're not familiar or you haven't heard the term yet, a progressive web app is basically just a fancy way for describing a mobile web app, or essentially going to a URL instead of downloading an app and all of its content. You actually just do it through the browser. It's entirely web-based, which is great because Ionic is entirely web-based, meaning aside from being able to deploy to traditional platforms like Apple's iOS, Android's Google Play Store, the Windows Store, you can now also target the mobile web with the exact same code. That's the idea. That's the goal. That's the dream. And we're already seeing this happen.
Yep. So for a long time, we were kind of like, oh, progressive web apps. I think there was a lot of hype going on this spring about them because Google was pushing them hard. I think
with good reason.
With good reason,
considering that they're Google.
Google really, really wants people to invest heavily in the web, because when you go to Google search, they want you to stay in the web and not go necessarily to someone else's app store,
Right.
whoever that is.
Whoever that may be.
Yeah, so whoever that may be. So they have a really big incentive to push the mobile web. And as part of that, this whole progressive web app thing is confusing, and also there's a ton of marketing jargon getting thrown around.
Yeah, like it's not really that difficult to understand. It's basically a rebrand of something that's already existed, prior to the idea of a progressive web app. There are a few new interesting things that come along with the progressive web app, and we'll get into that. And actually, we have a progressive web app that we want to show you guys.
So that's kind of what I was going to get to. For a long time, I know people have been hearing us kind of talk about it, because for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Now all these Ionic developers can deploy to the App Store, but also to the mobile web with the exact same code. But we didn't really have any good demos. It was kind of just hand wavy. But now we actually have a really awesome demo, thanks to one of our great new employees, Justin, who put together an amazing Hacker News client that runs as a progressive web app on Chrome, on Android. Feels amazing. Feels like an amazing native app.
It really does. It kind of blew us away.
I was like, they'll tell you I was obsessed with that. I was telling everyone, oh my God, you need to check out this progressive web app that Justin built, because it's amazing, it's fast,
annoying.
It's fluid, and the experience just of progressive web apps, and also the detail that he paid attention to, made it an incredible example of a progressive web app.
Yeah, not only is it awesome to just see it open that way, but it's fast. It feels faster than what I was expecting.
I'm trying to load it up here, so in the meantime, Ben can entertain you.
No, it's actually I think the thing that I was the most impressed with was the scrolling in the app.
Yeah, I mean, most people who use Ionic 1 know that
scrolling is the bane of their Ionic 1 existence.
I know. We used JavaScript scrolling because we could get pull to refresh to work back in the day.
It's the bane of our existence too. So honestly, this is one of the reasons why we're building Ionic 2. So one of the many reasons.
So the cool thing about, and I'm just loading it up here on my Nexus. The cool thing about it is,
we should say what is that? So that's a Nexus, or is that just the Nexus? Oh, sorry, that's the Nexus 6. Nexus 6.
Yeah. So,
but it'll work on.
I'm an iPhone user, so I'm kind of an Android noob. But basically, the cool thing is, I can go into it in the browser, and immediately
we can cut and show.
We'll cut and show, but I'm just gonna pretend you can see what I'm doing. Immediately, what I notice is the Chrome's Chrome, the browser Chrome on Chrome, actually turns orange, because that was the theme that he set in the app manifest file. And the app manifest file is this additional metadata file that Chrome reads to do fun stuff, make your app feel more native. So in this example, they've actually said, okay, I know this page represents or is an app that's orange, so they display the orange color in the header. It's a minor thing, but I think it's cool. Now, the other thing is, this is just a mobile website.
I'm trying to film it here. Switch it over here.
Oh, so this is a mobile website, so I can go and I can treat it like any other Chrome page, and it's feels like any other Android app. If I go up in the menu, it's a standard Android menu that we all know. It's very buttery smooth. I can't believe it's actually not butter.
Also, I can't believe it's not butter either. What about Chrome actually changes the header bar.
Yeah, so the app manifest file says my theme color is this Hacker News orange.
Yeah.
So I can customize completely the Chrome. Now, if I want to go and actually save this to my home screen,
you haven't actually downloaded this or anything.
No, I'm just visiting in the browser. So supposedly, if I come here often enough, Chrome will just be like, all right, we know you really like this website. You just want to add it to your home screen? Jeez. So we could do that, and then it'll add it to your home screen. And it's like any other app. This is my Android phone, so I can go and launch it as an app. Get this really cool splash screen that should load, or it skipped it this time. But now it's just like any other app. It's full screen. This is just like any other Android Ionic app in the App Store, except we didn't have to install anything. They could use it both on the web and on the phone. And the cool thing is, with Ionic Native and Cordova, you'll be able to use a lot of the same plugins that have web fallbacks. So I'm thinking like camera support. Android Chrome has things like WebRTC, geolocation. So all that stuff will work the same if you kind of are smart about which plugins you use. But there's some ways to kind of just build one code base that does enhance itself when running completely natively, has a little more support for offline modes, service workers, which I'll talk about in a second, when it's running as a...
Service workers.
Yeah. And then it can run in like a nice kind of standard mobile web environment when it's not any of those.
Let's talk about service workers.
So, okay.
We're really excited about service workers.
Service workers are kind of super confusing.
Let's define them first.
So I'll define them in very
Can I play with this?
kind of common terms because the actual definition I think is a little bit, well, okay, who am I kidding? I'm probably going to be way too nerdy about it. I like to think of them as a proxy script. And basically you have the script where it can run in the background and respond to things like network requests and proxy them and actually do whatever it wants with them. So that's how we get offline mode. Like, let's say your app uses the fetch API to say, hey, go fetch the last 50 stories from the Hacker News API. That fetch call goes through your service worker, if you included one. That service worker says, okay, they're trying to make a fetch. Like, I can either go and actually do the fetch and go request it from the API, and that's a slower process that requires being online. Or if I know I have that data cached, I can return it immediately. And there's some nice nuance for kind of cache invalidation and making sure you're getting new data after a while. But the nice thing is your script has amazing control to override any single network request to return offline data. So what happens with service workers, and I think the reason why they're going to be a little bit slow to take off, is we kind of think like, oh, offline mode. But what offline mode means for every single app is very custom. You might want your app to do one thing, someone else is going to want their app to do another thing. So you see these service worker files that are filled with a lot of custom code, and it's kind of hard to know how to adapt it to your app. So what we're going to do with Ionic, what Angular 2 is doing with their mobile toolkit, is coming up with recipes for service workers. So here's a standard offline mode. You could get in and mess with it, but chances are you'll get 90% of what you need out of the standard recipe. So service workers are very powerful. They can do things like listen for push notifications and everything like that. They're only supported on Android Chrome. They might be supported on some of the other obscure browsers, but they're most notably not supported on Safari for iOS yet. But I will say with this app that Justin built, it actually runs really well on iOS Safari, and we can get some nice experience from it. And we just get a nicer experience on Android. So everything is working really well.
Isn't that a strange thing to say?
It is.
We're getting a nicer experience on Android.
I gotta give them a lot of credit. I'm very impressed with the APIs. I am really, really excited because I think you'll be like me and you'll have this experience where you built this full app experience. It's running in a browser and it's installed on your home screen and it's not a native app.
You never had to go through any app store.
And that same code can be turned around and deployed to the App Store. And that's what's unique about Ionic. And I keep pushing that because it's like a superpower.
It really is.
It's a good one, too.
It's honestly why we keep doing this, because we're in love with that idea, that concept.
The web running everywhere. Now we just need to get Electron in there.
That's next. Let's hold off on that. Let's solve the current problems we have. We have a lot of things we're trying to solve.
We're very ambitious.
But I think it's good. I think we've actually come a really long way with Ionic 2. I'm trying to think, is there anything else any big things we want to talk about?
So let's talk about release date. Okay,
all right.
We are waiting on
Contentious discussion.
I bet so many people are like, geez, when are they going to talk about the stupid release date? You had to listen to all the other stuff first.
That's right.
So release date, we are waiting on incorporating Angular 2 offline template compiling. So what that means is instead of loading your templates dynamically, which we just found is rather slow on things like iOS, etc., we are going to use this offline template compiling where your template is pre-compiled into a very efficient format ahead of time. And this is more efficient than what Angular 1 ever had. It's built into this kind of like, it's not a template string anymore. It is this really efficient, raw, view manipulation code. So that was kind of the biggest thing we were waiting on because
It
was a holdup because for everyone who's tried Ionic 2, you'll notice that there's a few things that feel like regressions from Ionic 1. Like the boot up time is really slow right now. The bundle size is really big right now. These are things that we knew were unacceptable from day one.
They bother us as much as they bother you. They've been driving us crazy.
Like, yeah, you should talk to Adam about it because he will give you a piece of his mind.
Yes.
But the Angular team has done an amazing job getting this pretty impressive system working to the point where like a little bit of pain over the last few months is going to lead to considerable improvement over anything we had before. So we're waiting to get that incorporated. Yesterday, we just got the first testing version of that working. And so the RC is waiting on that to be done, and we're just anticipating a few more weeks. Don't hold me to it, but you can pester Adam about it. I'm sure he'd love.
Yeah, go talk to Adam about it.
Go talk to Adam about it. He loves that question.
Yeah. All right.
But that's really it. So coming very soon, and then we want to be aggressive about going to production and pushing Ionic 2 as the default because so many people are using it today and loving it. The forum guy, the little forum fan.
We should reach out to him.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's see what he thinks.
That was like ancient history in Ionic 2.
Considering the space that we're in, it literally is like ancient history.
Yeah.
Considering how fast things move.
So coming soon to a repo near you.
I like that. Let's start using that. Okay, so what do we want to talk about next? We could talk about Creator. We could talk about the cloud.
Do we want to do some featured apps?
We could, yeah. Let's.
We kind of did one. I wanted to feature that Hacking News thing.
We did. Let's save our features for the end because I'm really excited about it.
Okay. Can I just say one thing though?
What do you got to say?
It's IPA day. And
it is IPA day. Cheers.
Cheers,
to
and
that.
we just magically had our glasses refilled. How cool is that?
That's what happens on IPA day.
It's a magical day.
Didn't you know that?
I do now. All right, sorry.
All right, let's talk about cloud. So let's keep it brief. But I want to make sure that we talk about it, which actually we should mention. Historically, we've been referring to what we're now calling the Ionic Cloud as the Ionic platform. So if there's some confusion there, basically what the Ionic platform or now the Ionic Cloud is it's a
what is it?
What? I don't know what it is. No, it's our backend services that we are working on alongside the open source framework. So things like push notifications, deploying live to your device without ever going to the App Store, user authentication, analytics, native build packaging, a bunch of awesome stuff that you might need after your app is in the App Store or potentially while you're building it for the App Store. So we have an awesome team that's been just working incredibly hard on this. It's super, super close to the production release. We're getting so excited here. There's a few remaining things left we want to tweak and finish up before we get it out there. One of which is a brand new documentation site, which is beautiful. We completely redesigned it from the ground up and reorganized a lot of the content to just make a little bit more sense and be a little more fluid and easy to use. So we're working on the little last remaining things with that. We're going to have some awesome starter projects that come out with it. But basically, the services are extremely stable. We have a lot of people in the beta using them. I think we sent, how many push notifications were sent?
We're sending,
millions at this point.
Many millions every single, week. So a lot of people using it, even though it's been in beta, we kind of told people not to use it. So the reason why we've taken so long to get to production is we saw so much demand. We're like, okay, there's a few things we needed to do to make sure
it stays up.
That this thing was going to scale. Like we launched the alpha pretty quickly, relatively speaking, and there were just a lot of scalability issues that we needed to solve. So a lot of this time that's kind of been under the hood is making this thing solid. So when we do roll it out shortly, we'll be able to say with 100% confidence, this thing's ready to go in production. In fact, people have been using it in production, despite us telling them not to, which is just beautiful. So we thank those people because they've really helped test this, and they've gotten a pretty awesome service, I think, and they're enjoying it. So a lot of awesome stuff coming. We'll probably do a bigger talk on it.
I think we'd like to, yeah. And the one big thing that we did just release is the Ionic 2. Ionic 2 support launched into the Cloud client.
Yep.
Recently.
So now you'll be able to use the cloud stuff really easily from Ionic 2. and we'll start to kind of move in that direction as we roll out new features.
Yeah, so we're not going to spend too much time on it because I think we'd like to dedicate a whole Ionic show just to talking about
And
how...
we'll probably have Eric on. Eric's
we should
leading
totally
it
have
up,
Eric
so
on. Yeah.
Eric will kind of give you the whole rundown.
So we'll get into all of that a different time, but we just wanted to give you a quick update. Everything is going swimmingly there. We're really excited about it. Super, super close. So honestly, stay tuned because we'll be going into production very, very soon. Should we talk about Creator? Let's put our Creator caps on and dig ourselves into Creator land. That sounds horrible.
Dig ourselves in that hole.
Let's dig ourselves in the Creator hole. So Creator just had a big release. The team has been working really, really hard, the Creator team, on adding code editing.
So basically...
into actual...
Yes. So basically, Creator was a really awesome prototyping tool, and people were getting a lot of use out of it, building quick prototypes, hallway testing stuff. They'd put it on the mobile app, and what we found was that was really great, but it only took you like this far. And to actually go a little bit further, you needed to be able to actually script things. You needed to be able to write code, incorporate third-party libraries, and all this stuff. So,
which I should say, for a lot of teams and a lot of people, that was more than enough. That initial amount, just getting the prototype up and running, exporting it out, the code that you needed, or exporting the APK files or whatever it is, that was more than enough. But we did have a sect of core users that were like, we would love to actually dig deeper into this tool.
Yeah, and our dream with the tool has always been to like have a visual way to build apps, but also have a easier way to kind of script it all. So, I think when we started this company, actually, we built a tool that was very similar back when we were working on jQuery mobile stuff. And the whole theory was, if we're going to have a popular UI framework like jQuery mobile and like Ionic now, you're going to naturally have these visual tools. Like every single thing before it had that. Like I think Visual Basic, like that was one of the whole reasons why it exploded was you could just build these apps, drag and drop all the components. It wasn't always pretty, but
it makes it more interactive. It makes it more fun. It makes it more accessible.
It makes it a lot more accessible. So for us, the first version of Creator was a way for us to get something out the door, to test how people responded to it, to start building a business on it. Like if you want to go and upgrade and use the pro features, that is one of the ways that Ionic is making money. So that's a really positive step for the company because a lot of people have asked us, like, how do you make money from all this free stuff?
And if you are a paying customer, thank you. We appreciate it.
We very much appreciate it.
It helps us continue to work on the open source stuff and do what we love.
So coding support is a huge step forward. We've got a lot of plans for taking you even further, doing some really awesome stuff. So
this is a first step.
As well as Ionic 2 support, which is, it's one of those things that people often ask us about. So all this stuff's coming soon. I think we could probably stand to do an entire new episode. I'm sure Matt would love to come up here. He is the one leading up the Creator team.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Creator at all, then you're definitely familiar with Matt Kramer, who is the product lead on Creator. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, Creator, feel free to reach out to us. Reach out to Matt on Twitter. He loves talking to all of you, talking in general, but he loves talking to everyone who uses our stuff and sharing and teaching. And Matt, I think, is planning on doing some new videos about how to actually like take advantage of the code editing in Creator and show you how to like get a little bit further in it if you so choose.
Yep.
So we're excited about it. It's a big step for Creator.
It is, and the tool, like I built the first version a while back, just kind of like really rough, and it's amazing what Matt and Lee, the other person on the project, have done to turn it into like an amazingly useful tool. And I think we've gotten such good feedback about it being improved and helping people really build things quickly. Like you can build a real app in like a minute or so. Like it's
and actually
that's maybe a little bit fast, but a couple of minutes you have a real app. It's kind of crazy.
And with the Creator app, the mobile app that goes with it, you can actually interact with the app or prototype that you're building like live on your device as it updates on. As you drag stuff into it and change it, you can have it on your phone, preview it. And now with the code editor, you can do dynamic stuff.
Yep.
It's really, really cool. So anyway, we'll get more into that. We will probably have some more videos coming up shortly all about Creator. So stay tuned for some of those.
let's go into some featured apps.
Let's do it. What was this? I don't know. It's our featured app.
It is our featured app.
We're honing in on featured app. I'm so excited to talk about this. I've been waiting for this moment.
I have too. Untappd. Untappd, if you like beer, if you drink a lot of beer, you've probably seen this app, Untappd. So Untappd, we'll show you it here with all these fancy graphics, is basically a social network for people who like beer. So if I drink a beer, let's say this beer, what is this beer?
So today we are drinking the local brewery Carbon 4 Fantasy Factory IPA.
Let's show the label because it's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is wild. It's a great design.
It's a wonderful design.
But
just makes you want to get a little bit crazy.
So why don't you use the app?
Okay, so I'm gonna check in. I have Untappd here. I'm gonna check in this beer.
I'm gonna film you checking in
because I want everyone to know that I am a serious beer drinker. So Fantasy Factory. I'll type that in. I spelled factory wrong, but the app is smart enough to fix my embarrassing mistakes. So I've got it here, and I'm gonna check in. Oh, it's got 4 stars, really popular. Why don't we take a picture? A camera.
Oh, nice. Let's do it.
I'm gonna go load the camera, and let's do a selfie.
Can I be in your selfie?
A double selfie. Cheers. Great, we've got a photo.
All right.
On the set of the Ionic Show. We're gonna leave a note saying it was just marvelous. Just a marvelous beer.
So while you're checking in, just for a little backstory for those of you who might not know, Untappd is an incredibly popular app, like Max said, for basically, it's essentially a social network for beer drinkers or beer aficionados. And you can check in different beers that you drink and see what other people are drinking nearby you, discover new beers that you might not know about. It's actually really, really cool. There's a lot more that it does, but that's the main concept of it. And what's cool about Untappd is that, and the reason why I think both you and I have a lot of respect for what the team is doing there and has been doing, is that they were always, from day one, a Cordova-based, web-based app. They were probably one of the first.
I think they maybe started with like PhoneGap.
Yeah.
Even earlier, but I need to double check my history.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I know that they were historically had just been built just pure Cordova. They ran their own CSS and HTML and JavaScript. They rolled their own internally, and then they recently found out about Ionic and basically took their UI design, colors, all of that stuff, and recomposed it onto their app using the Ionic UI kit. And I believe it's Ionic 1, correct?
Yeah. So just want to back up really quickly because the cool thing about Untappd, if you think about how popular the app is, how much the users love the app, they were one of the absolute best Cordova apps out there.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, when I was just getting into Cordova, they proved to all the Cordova developers out there what you could do with this platform and what a great experience you could build
with the web
on all these devices. The challenge for everyone else who was watching that was we weren't as good as the Untappd team. We didn't know how to build a mobile UI out of these web primitives like CSS and divs and all this stuff that felt fast and fluid and dealt with all the quirks of all the different browsers. So for them, they were an amazing team that knew how to do this. And Ionic was kind of born out of the idea that let's try to take something like Untappd and take all the concepts of how you kind of build something like that and release them as reusable components.
Yeah, make them a little bit more generic, cleaned up the design, make them more cross-platform, cross-browser, so that people can take them and then build with them according to their own brand.
Yep, exactly. And now we are very humbled and proud that they've since adopted Ionic 1, which I think says a lot about the reusability and the value of having these components. And we are super thankful. Didn't see that coming. Actually, didn't even know that they had done that until we saw a random tweet. So
right. So Greg Avola, who is I believe he's one of the founders. He is a co-founder of this app. we actually interviewed the team. We interviewed Greg, and he had mentioned that their code had kind of turned to spaghetti after all the years of trying to just maintain this thing as it was going on and on and on these years and becoming more popular. And kind of one of the things that they really liked was when they switched to Ionic, it allowed them to just clean all of that up and move a lot quicker, because now they have basically like a template to follow and rules to follow, and then they can just add their brand on top of it, and it just works. And he also mentioned that they plan to move to Ionic 2 very soon, which we're also really excited about.
Yeah,
so we're just really happy.
Another motivating factor to get that RC out.
That's true. We're really, really grateful to have them use Ionic. It means a lot to us because, like you said, I think we looked up to what they were doing a lot, and still do. And it's just a cool app in general.
And just to kind of revisit the whole like Cordova thing again, that was really, I think, the challenge that Cordova had for a long time in PhoneGap. It was a great stack, but it didn't give you all the pieces. And this is something that we've said over and over. It didn't give you all the same pieces that a native developer would get from Apple to build their app. Like Apple gave you, here's a nice tab bar, and here's like, a navigation thing. You don't have to worry about it. Just focus on like your content inside of it. Cordova was a blank slate. It was basically, here's the body tag. Everything is up to you, which was really great because you could build, like easily turn around and build like a game with Canvas, with anything else, but it was challenging in that you didn't have those components. So
it was open-ended, but it was almost like to a detriment. It was like too open-ended.
Yeah. So a lot of people would struggle to kind of put the pieces together and deal with all the browser issues. Teams like Untappd had the skills to do that, and so Ionic, I think, was kind of inspired by them and be like, all right, let's kind of do this reusable. So, anyways, enough about that. We love Untappd. We have some people on the team who are super obsessed, who are have drinking a lot of beer and
too many beers.
Maybe too many, but that's up for them to decide. So we are super thankful to have them. We love the app. Check it out if you like beer. If you want to tell your friends that you like beer, check out Untappd.
Definitely. Okay, well, I feel like we have covered the main things we wanted to cover today. We went pretty deep with Ionic 2 again. There's just so much to talk about. There's so many things changing. The space is just constantly evolving. And for us, it's making sure that we're literally like on the bleeding edge of whatever is happening in the like JavaScript world. So far as Angular 2 goes with the RCs, working with the Angular team. Some of our team members on the framework were actually just out there last week to sync up with them even further and make sure that Ionic 2 is always at the bleeding edge of the latest stuff that's coming out from them. So we wanted to make sure we took this time out to talk about all of those things.
Yep. And we've been quiet. I'm sure a lot of people are curious what we've been up to. That's all going to change here soon. We've been heads down. We hired a bunch of people on the team, some really great people all around the country and internationally. So a lot of stuff going on just to kind of build up the team and level up a little bit. And now everything's just kind of coming together. I'm so excited to get it out, all this stuff. So stay tuned. We'll have tons of updates this fall. It's going to be a super busy fall for us. And I think people are going to be super happy with what we release.
I agree. All right, well, I think that just about does it. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
IPA day.